talk today. You know what I mean? I get some inspiring going on. Then, yeah.
Top of the day, beautiful people. Audrey, shalom, shalom. All right, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. It is June the 8th, 2022, day 129 of year 4 of reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets, and on the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1147. Today we pick it up in OAHSPE on page 194. Ugh, boy, pick the drink up with my hand. And then if we get time today, we're going to read some more in the meditation book on picking up on page 180. Lavon, blessings. Rita, good morning, good morning. All right, beautiful people. So let's get started. Father, we thank you for another day. We're here on our post searching for truth. And we thank you that we encounter truth. And we take the truth and we assimilate it to our life and walk in it. All right, beautiful people. Let me sip some water. All right. Chapter 20 at the top of page 194. Let me do myself a refresh real quick. Oh, yeah. Dividing North Guatemala. Okay. The nakedness. That's right. Jen, Grand Rising. Okay, right. They wanted to put clothes on. Okay. I had to refresh myself real quick. Okay. When the recreation was ended, Yitanti called his council together, and he sat on the throne, and Fragapati and Hoab sat on his left hand on the throne also. The voice of Jehovah came to Yitanti, saying, Behold, my sons and daughters, this heaven and this land shall not be like any other place, for hither shall rise in time after, and they that shall begin the founding of my kingdom amongst mortals. Let me read that again. The voice of okay, so remember, in my quick refresh, remember they're in the heavens above North Guatemala, which is North America, and they're dividing it up between the hosts that are there to do the jobs or whatever it is they're going to do above this land over here, right? Okay. When the recreation was ended, Yitanti called his council together, and he sat on the throne, and Fragapati and Hoab sat on his left hand on the throne also. The voice of Jehovah came to Yitanti, saying, Behold, O my sons and daughters, this heaven and this land shall not be like any other place, for hither shall rise in time after they that shall begin the founding of my kingdom amongst mortals. That's pretty cool, huh? Francis, shalom, shalom. That this place was chosen, right? And keep on reading. Not that any other place is not, but I get super excited when I hear anything about America, because for years while reading the Bible, I've always wondered, where is America in all of this? They removed it out of the Bible. That's why we couldn't find it. We wouldn't read anything about it. For in the lands of the east and the heavens of the east, I have given them lords and gods before whom they shall fall down and worship. But in this heaven and this land beneath it shall not be given any lord, nor god, nor any person born of woman for their resurrection. To this end have I created this subjective heaven and her plateau, and they shall endure till the dawn of Cosmon and the overthrow of war and mortal kingdoms. From this throne will I come in that day through my chiefs and reveal the histories of my kingdoms, and I will radiate outward around about from this heaven until my king encircle the whole earth, and until the earth's heavens are mine also. Hold on. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Mom, shalom, shalom. And whether the Ehuans be mortals or spirits, ye shall not here teach them to worship anyone save the Great Spirit. Think about it. If we've done any kind of learning throughout history, Bradley, shalom, shalom, Shayla G, great rising. At least from some of the movies. I know you got to be careful with the movies you watch as well. But they talk about how even when, we'll say when Columbus, right? We know Columbus did not found the Americas. It was people already here. But anyway, when they came over and began to interact with the people over here, they realized that they also worship one God, and they called him the Great Spirit, right? Okay, that's interesting. And whether the Ehuans be mortals or spirits, ye shall not here teach them to worship anyone save the Great Spirit. For a question will arise amongst mortals in the beginning of Cosmon as to whether mortals are ruled by the angels of heaven. And I will prove it before them in that this land all gods and lords and saviors shall be cast out, and mortals shall become worshippers of the Great Spirit, being ruled to that end by the inspiration that shall descend from this heaven through the spirits of the Ehuan race. And they shall know that I, Jehovah, alone rule over all and within all my works. Okay, I had to mark it side. Be wise, my sons and daughters, for as ye now find little aspiration amongst the host of wandering spirits, so will the same lack of aspiration be manifested in the beginning of a cosmon against mortals. The voice ceased. Yatante called Etzing, his assistant god, saying, Come thou and sit on the throne, and I will go now for 40 days with Fragapati and show him all my works. And I will go also with him to Hapacha, god of Ipsioji, after which I will return hither. I'm sorry, y'all. The AC in here has been up, and I think it's causing my sinuses to run from the eye water. I ain't about to have this.
Can you get you something?
No, I'm good. I took the before we started, but I don't think it kicked in yet. And I ate an apple, so okay. Start my bitters today. Yaki. I got them, so I'm definitely gonna start it. I'm not having this. Okay. Be wise, my sons and daughters, for as ye now find little aspiration amongst the hosts of wandering spirits, so will the same lack of aspiration be manifested in the beginning of Cosmon amongst mortals. The voice ceased. Yatante called Etzing, his assistant god, saying, Come thou and sit on the throne. I will go now for 40 days with Fragapati and show him all my works, and I will go also with him to Hapacha, god of Ipsioji, after which I will return hither. Etzing came and sat on the throne, duly saluting, having been anointed and crowned previously. Then rose up Fragapati to speak, perceiving that the great multitude desired to hear him. Auntie, shalom. He said, In what they have done, I am well pleased, O Jehovah. Through thy voice I selected them, and they deserve neither praise nor censure, being thy servants. Thou hast wisely chosen them, for in this dawn I perceive the foundation of that which will reach mortals in the third Danha that cometh after. And after cometh after is reference letter G, and reference letter G is found on page 236. This is a reference to the dawn of Cosmon. The two Danhas following Fragapati were under the administration of Sipentra, Armij, and Lika. The third Danha marked the dawn of Cosmon. Okay. All right, back to page 195 at the top. And because thou hast chosen this place, O Father, great is the responsibility of these, thy lords and thy gods, because they have supplicated thee. Thou hast guided them, and they cannot err. Because their work hath been slow, they have great honor in patience and persistence. May thy wisdom, power, and love continue with them for thy glory, now and forever. Amen. Fragapati ceased, but the light became brilliant above his head, and the voice came out of the light, saying, more shall they concern themselves in a righteous foundation of my kingdom than in a multitude of conversions and resurrections. For the standard of their lords and gods and their successors is of more value than tens of thousands of redeemed who are of little wisdom and strength, for the latter will be raised up afterward. The voice ceased, and Fragapati came down from the throne, followed by Yatanti and Hoab. These Essenars chanted, All hail, great Jehovah, all hail, great Jehovah's power, his light, the immortal voice. And when the gods advanced to Sitius, they halted, standing abreast, and then filed in front of the throne, saluting in the sign of Om, and were answered by Fragapati. This is plucking my nerves. Sorry, y'all. My eye keeps watering. My eye. It's definitely sinuses trying to drain. I don't want y'all to think I'm sitting here crying out of one eye. Okay. Lastly, the marshals of the traveling host. Lastly came the marshals of the traveling host, and when they had passed, the gods followed after, thus passing out of the capital to the place of the ships of fire, followed by the inhabitants of Yatanti. Thus they entered the Avalanza with music and cheering, and thus they departed first to survey the kingdom of Yatante, and then to go to Ipsioji. Trina, hey girl, hey. All right, y'all. Chapter 21. After Fragapati had examined the places of the Asaphs and of the physicians and other such places as belong in the lower heavens, he descended to Hochidawa, the land of delusion, the happy hunting ground, in order to witness the games and tournaments which were so far maintained by a great expenditure of labor on the part of the Etherians for teaching by subjective illustrations. Jehovah said, as mortal children can be taught by objective illustration, so have I created my S worlds capable of similar process subjectively. My rules aren't man's rules, nor are my worlds illustrated as man illustrated. Behold, behold my rainbow, which is a subjective illustration to mortals of a bow without the substance of a bow. But man bendeth a stick and saith, Behold, a bow, and he holdeth it in his hand, but mine he cannot touch. I gave to mortals to teach their sons and daughters many combinations by the use of objects, that they should know a circle, a square, a triangle, or learn to compute numbers by the use of objects. Inversely, in the same way, I created subjective means for the spirits of the dead, that they might be taught and amused with my works. To corporeans, I give corporal eyes and corporal ears, that they might attain to wisdom on earth, but to a few I give suis, that they may see and hear things spiritually. To the spirits of mortals who die in infancy, I give spiritual eyes and spiritual ears, but without cultivation, they hear not corporal things, nor see corporal things. But to such spirits as have fulfilled an earth life, I created them to see and hear after death the matters of both worlds. Nevertheless, there are many spirits in heaven who have not fulfilled either a spiritual or a corporal life, and they can see but little and hear but little, for which reason I commanded that they should be called Druhas, signifying spirits of darkness. And I sent my gods and my lords, saying to them, Go, ye spirits of darkness, for they neither see nor hear heaven nor earth, and are wandering about indifferent even to their own nakedness. And ye shall create mirrors and lenses and optical illusions and delusions, and provide games and entertainments for them, so that their understanding may be opened up for the glory of my kingdoms. When the Avalanza arrived at Hachidawa, it was lowered and made as an observatory in order to witness what was going on, and yet so provided that it could be moved about from place to place. And they witnessed the heavenly tournaments and games, the boating and fishing and hunting, and all other entertainments representative of what these angels had been engaged at in mortal life, and yet these things were but subjective and not real. But it came to pass that many Druhas were restored to memory of earth life, restored to seeing and hearing, and in fact, to know that they had entered another world, illustrating to their dull senses that it was possible for them to learn to see things and to hear things understandingly. Nevertheless, there were within these regions hundreds of millions of angels so stupid as to be void of form and expression. Jehovah has said, When a man hath fainted, thou shalt arise him by calling his memory to things past. And when the Druge in heaven hath seen who he is, in his place also, thou shalt show him symbols of things past, and thus awake him. So remember, even though when the human spirits, when they pass into the unseen world or into the S world, S is just another way to say the spiritual realm. If they become wicked spirits, or if they leave here in a state of wickedness, that's not the end for them. They don't just go to what they call it here, Hada, which we call hell today, and mention hell as well. They don't just stay in that state. It is a point where they are restored. So all that go there still have the opportunity to be restored. And I think that's one major thing that the church they never say. They just damn you to hell and that's it. You're gonna burn forever. And that is not the case. That is not the case. Nevertheless, there were within these regions hundreds of millions of angels so stupid as to be void of form and expression. Jehovah had said, When a man hath fainted, thou shalt arouse him by calling his memory to things past. And when the Druge in heaven hath seen who he is, and his place also, thou shalt show him symbols of things past, and thus awake him. Jehovah has said, Behold, O man, thou art the chiefest glory of my creations. Neither created I any animal that walketh on the land, or flieth in the air, or swimmeth in the water, or that crawleth on its belly with desire for spiritual life, nor with capacity to accumulate spirituality. But to thee only, O man, have I given power to aggregate the spiritual entity. For my animals I bestowed like a vessel that is full of water. No more can be put into them. And also, when the vessel is destroyed, the water runneth back to the ocean. I quicken them into life by my own hand. But when I take my hand away, lo, they are going back into dissolution. As a drop of water hath no power before the sun, but evaporateth and is seen no more, so is the spirit of all the animals I created before the light of my countenance. But to thee, O man, I gave power for everlasting life. Nevertheless, as a man may take a drop of water and put it in a vial and keep it for a long time, so have I given to my exalted angels power to take the spirit of a fish or of an animal suddenly dead and reclothe it with a semblance of a body for a season, but yet it is only a subjective existence. And even as a man letteth a stone out of his hand, and it falleth to the ground, so when my angels let go their hands on my spiritual animals, their spirits fall into the sea of my body and are seen no more. Even so, also, but in less degree, created I the trees, the grass, the moss, and all vegetable things that grow on the face of the earth. And I gave to my exalted angels power to take the spirit out of a tree or a bush or a plant and to carry it away and reclothe it with corporal substance. But to my exalted gods I gave power to do the same things, not with one plant only, but with whole forests and with animals and with fish and serpents. And when they do these things in atmosphere, they are called subjective heavens. Wherefore it came to pass in the ancient days that when spirits of darkness returned to mortals, they told them that the heaven was like unto the earth, with everlasting life unto all animals as well as to man. Turn not away from such spirits, O man, but learn from them, that thou mayest not tarry long in my bound heavens when thou becomest a spirit also. For if thou settest thy soul to feed on animals and to dwell with them, the gods cannot deliver thee to my emancipated heavens till thou hast served thy time in the lower heaven. One great light have I bestowed unto all men, that they may progress forever. Though the waters of the ocean rise up and make clouds, and the clouds fall down as rain, and run to the rivers, and thence back into the ocean 1,000 times, 10,000s of times, yet that water hath not progressed. Neither have I given progress to a stone, nor to a tree, nor to an animal, but to man only have I given progress. Be wise, O man, and tie not thyself to things that progress not, nor set thy soul upon them, lest they become a bondage to thee in the next world. But for the droops I have created heavens midway betwixt light and darkness, subjective and objective, that they may be redeemed. Fragapati also visited Fragapati also visited the Washa'wow'wow, the Washa'wow'wow. Fragapati also visited the Washa'wow'wow, the great hunting fields and the place of tournaments, and the Sikatosi, where thousands and tens of thousands of Druhas were being amused and instructed and awakened to their conditions and to their possibilities. And when Fragapati and his host had seen the beauty and grandeur of this lowest of heavens and made a record of their affairs, Yatanti said, "Now have I shown thee, O Fragapati, the foundation of a great house, even my kingdom, which is Jehovah's. I am at thy service to go whithersoever thou to go whithersoever thou mayest desire. Then spake Fragapati, saying, I desire to descend beneath, even to the earth's surface, and survey the plains and rivers and lakes in the regions where the Father's kingdom will be founded. Let my mathematicians compute the time, and these things shall also be recorded in the Etherian libraries for the benefit of the angels of that day. The mathematicians computed the time, and then Yo Si Putu. And then Yo Si Putu, the chief, said, 8,900 years. Hold on, y'all. This is bugging me. How does one eye just keep watering? Uncle JB. Shalom. Okay. The mathematicians computed the time, and then Yosi Putu, the chief, said 8,900 years. So Fragapati caused the Avalanza to be lowered down to the earth's surface, and he coursed the land over, east and west and north and south. And when he saw it was a fair country, as to land and water, he said, Behold the wisdom of Jehovah in the foundation and plans for inhabiting and subduing the earth. And yet 8,900 years. And after 8,900 years is reference letter H. Jump on over on page 236. H. The Ark of Fragapati endured 3,100 years. The text relates that the Ark of Sepenta Armij was 2,400 years, and the Ark of Lika was 3,400 years. The total is therefore 8,900 years, bringing the projection of the time down to the dawn of Cosmon. Behold the wisdom of Jehovah in the foundation and plans for inhabiting and subduing the earth, and yet 8,900 years. Oh, what innumerable millions on the earth will go down in darkness ere that day. Here the light will fall. Here the beginning of the death of Cephas. Yet thy hand, O Jehovah, is over all. Yeah, 27 minutes. Let's read 22. It's pretty short. It's only like 14 verses. Okay, chapter 22. Fragapati sent messengers to Hapacha, god of Ipsioji, appraising him of the visit. So Hapacha hastily called in his lords and captains and fathers, preparing a time of recreation and also preparing suitable reception and entertainment. And Hapacha provided in this manner. First, 100,000 musicians formed in 8 parts of a circle with 8 intervening spaces. With each group, he provided 1,000 marshals, and they stood in front of the musicians with 8 intervening spaces also. Next within, he provided places for the messengers, of whom there were 300,000. Then next came the Asaphs, of whom there were 1,000,000. Next came the Ashars, of whom there were 2,000,000. Next came the nurses and physicians. Next, the teachers in factories and schools and colleges. And of all these, there were 14,600,000. Of the grade first above the Essenes were 20 million. Of the second grade, which was the highest, there were 30 million, but no Essenes were present. In the midst of the circle was the throne of Hapacha, now extended so as to accommodate his lords. To the south of his throne, There were, no, I added a word. To the south of his throne were the seats of the captains of his host. In a crescent were his counselors, of whom there were 1,000,000. Hapacha, having thus called them together, and having explained to but few of them the purpose, now addressed them, saying, by the wisdom and power of Jehovah I speak before you. That which I say is not of myself, more than of the faith I have in Jehovah, of which faith ye are likewise blessed. Since our youth up, we have been advised by the guardian angels, their lords and God, to be firm in faith in Jehovah above all things. For it was declared to us in the olden time that there was a higher heaven and a lower heaven, and that through faith in the Father we should all ultimately ascend and dwell in his holiest kingdoms. For which reason ye have been steady workers, excuse me. For which reason ye have been steady workers, since your mortal lives have been put away, even for this kingdom, raising up many and causing them to rejoice in everlasting life. But as it has been promised ye beforehand, that the gods above us, sorry, but as it has been promised beforehand that the gods above us would surely come and deliver all who are prepared for the next resurrection, even so to this day cherish ye the hope for wider fields of labor, where ye may partake your kindred and others who have become wise in Jehovah's light. The time of that resurrection is near at hand for many of you. Our Father hath brought this heaven into a lighter region, that ye may be prepared for that still greater light beyond. And because of the new light that is with us, ye have beholden that many of the Ehuan Essenes have deserted our nurseries and gone back to the earth, for they love the darkness of earth more than they love the light of heaven. My lords have sent messengers to me from various parts of the earth, saying to me, as much as they have deserted your places in heaven, even so much have the Essenes returned to mortals in great numbers. And it hath come to pass that great manifestations of the Spirit presence, and it hath come to pass that great manifestations of Spirit presence are now common to men and women and children on earth. Many of these Essenes, falling in with Druhas, have adopted their roving habits, denying that there is any higher heaven, honestly believing they will have an opportunity to reincarnate themselves and dwell again in mortal form. Right? So reading ahead in some parts and looking at this. Remember when I said, I think it was yesterday where I said, y'all, I'm really starting to revisit this whole reincarnation piece with some other information that I'm getting and looking at. I was like, we might be missing some information. Listen, many of these Essenes, falling in with Druhas, have adopted their roving habits, denying that there is any higher heaven, honestly believing that they will have an opportunity to reincarnate themselves and dwell again in mortal form, knowing no higher heaven than the earth, and knowing no happiness save in the indulgence of lust. They appear to mortals and marry in manifestation, falsely pretending to be the kin of the living. Like, we your kinfolk, homie. Let me just possess you for a few moments and we'll get this done. Or people calling on their ancestors to come help them with stuff or set somebody in their place. Hold on, this is good. Hold on. Okay, let me read this whole verse again. Many of these Essenes, falling in with Druhas, have adopted their roving habits, denying that there is any higher heaven, honestly believing they will have an opportunity to reincarnate themselves and dwell again in mortal form, knowing no higher heaven than the earth, and knowing no happiness save in the indulgence of lust, they appear to mortals and marry in manifestation, falsely pretending to be the kin of the living, which sign forerunneth the approach of a new dawn of Dan near at hand, which sign forerunneth the approach of a new dawn of Dan near at hand. Being thus doubly armed in prophecy, your God called you to witness the world and proceedings of Fragapati, who is on his way hither, accompanied by Yatante, God of Yatante, creator of Hochidawa. For more than 600 years, many of us labored in this field, and our harvests for Gal have been the most esteemed of all the resurrections contributed by the lords of the earth. To comport with our dignity, I have commanded the builders of Otivans to have in readiness, representing these harvests, a vessel for my lords and their attendants, and my chief marshal to go part way and meet our visitors, bearing the sign of the triangle and of fruit and the altar. Hapacha then gave instructions in full and presently the receiving host departed in the Otivan with music, rejoicing, being cheered by the host remaining. In the meantime, Hapacha caused the host to be put in order. All right, y'all. And so that is where we're going to pause at today here. Dana, hey, girl, hey. You feeling better? I was thinking about you the last couple of days. I was going to reach out to you today, but you came in. You're strong enough to hit the button. All right, y'all. So we'll come back here tomorrow. Oh, yeah, 37 minutes. We're going to jump over to page 180. Janie of Yah, shalom, shalom. Thank you. Okay. So we paused. Remember we was doing the head diagrams yesterday, the self, no, not yesterday, day before yesterday, before we took a break. Robin, shalom, great day. So this is continuing with this, right? Okay. So it has two more diagrams, and I'm gonna read this, but this is a continuation of the head diagrams, right? Okay, so as we'll see as we get to this next page, if we get to this page today. So okay, so this first diagram right here, which is this one, and I'll take a picture of this today and share it. Hold on, Facebook, YouTube. Okay. Maybe that should say above. It threw me off because it says below. Yeah, they should say above, but it say below. Okay. It say below, but it should say above. A three-dimensional drawing representing creation. The four tiers of the ancient Egyptian Djed symbol refer to states of psycho-spiritual consciousness as well as the nature of the universe. Thus, the self is the origin and sustainer of creation, right? So the four tiers is this right here, and this is the Djed, right? What you see, the god Jehudi holding. But this represents the four tiers of creation, which say, and I'll start down here at the bottom, right? It says gross body and senses, which is the physical plane. Then you have the subtle body and senses, which is the astral plane. Then you have the unconscious ego, which is the causal or your causal plane. And then you have the all, which is Jah. And they in this book they call it the self. They go like back and forth between the all and the self. What's this, the great spirit, right? Okay, so you can see I'm gonna show you the 4 levels, and then when you see a jet, you also see these 4 lines right here. That always represents the 4 levels of creation. Everything all together. Okay. And so the diagram at the bottom is the same thing. It's just exploded a little bit more. And so I'm gonna read this. Above, a three-dimensional drawing representing the human mind. Okay. So at the bottom again, it has gross body and senses, which are thoughts and actions. And the smaller print in here, this is what they added right here, right? Okay. So for the bottom, for gross body and senses, thoughts and actions, there are questions. When can I go camping? Where can I go camping? How much will a camping trip cost, etc. So the second level is a subtle body and senses, which are the desires and urges. And above it, it says, I like campfires. I hate hotels. I want fun. I wish I could go camping. And then you have the third level, which is the unconscious ego, and that has impressions, which are wilderness, fun, outdoors, fun, open sky, fun, right? So when you think of those things, the impressions you get when you hear certain words, wilderness, oh, that's going to be fun, or outdoors, definitely fun, open sky, fun. All right, and so then the fourth top level, which is just blank, it's the all self, is the all or the self. And so on page 181 is just going to explain all of this in more detail. The unconscious level of the mind is like a filing cabinet which stores memories in the form of impressions and events. These impressions form the basis which impels the soul forward after death of the physical body. They are carried over after death, and they impel the soul to have experiences in the astral plane and also lead it to reincarnate after a period of time. A child seems to be unburdened and happy go lucky. However, as the process of growth ensues, the desires, urges, preferences, etc., emerge. These are a factor of the dormant or latent deep impressions which are sprouting up from the unconscious level of the mind. If there are no impressions based on ignorance and egoism, the soul does not reincarnate but experiences union with the absolute. This is termed nirvana, liberation, resurrection, freedom, etc. Alicia, yeah. Hey girl, hey. When an intense event is experienced, the impression is stored in the unconscious. When a situation occurs that relates to that impression, the impression will come forth and emerge in the form of an urge or feeling of desire in the subconscious level, and then the urge emerges as a thought in the conscious level. When intensified, they become cravings or uncontrollable yearnings or longings. If the longings are not fulfilled, there arises anger and hatred toward whatever is seen as the object or person which is preventing the fulfillment of the desire. For example, if you had an experience in your youth which you found positive, you will store a positive feeling about it. For instance, if you enjoyed a camping trip, you will feel positive about doing it again. If you had a bad experience camping, you will develop a dislike. And if an opportunity arises to go camping, you will refuse. This principle works for all desires, whether they be positive or negative. For example, if you have developed impressions of criminality and enjoyment from stealing, You will be stimulated when situations arise which afford you the opportunity to steal, or you will think, plot, and finally act in certain ways which will lead you to criminal activities and to meet other criminals. It's funny. I thought about a friend of mine, and she told me her husband gets enjoyment out of stealing things. And she was like, Pam, what's crazy is we don't have to steal anything. She said, but he is a she said he is a thief to his heart. And she asked him, she said, why do you steal stuff? Why don't you we got enough money, you could just go in there and buy it. He's like, I don't know. I just like to steal stuff. Then I'm gonna tell you what it is when we get off live. Hold on. But she had me cracking up. It was absolutely hilarious. I'm like, for real? She said, girl, he's always stealing stuff. I'm like, okay. I'm like stealing, like he take your stuff. She said, no. Like he goes to stores and he gets a high out of being able to get out of the store stealing something that they thought they had locked down. She said he thinks about how he gonna steal something that is unstealable. I'm like, that's crazy. But yeah, listen, so that's hilarious. Listen. For example, if you have developed impressions of criminal, and let me just say, this is probably horrible to say, but she is no longer with him because she didn't want to end up going to jail being accessory to being accessory to a thief. And plus that caused a whole bunch of other issues because she was really trying to break him out of his stealing habits, but it was just really a part of him that he didn't want to give up. It is crazy, y'all. I'm just like, man, I thought she was joking at first. So she started telling me some of the stuff he was stealing. Okay, listen. For example, if you have developed impressions of criminality and enjoyment from stealing, you will be stimulated when situations arise which afford you the opportunity to steal, or you will think, plot, and finally act in certain ways which will lead you to criminal activities and to meet other criminals. In this manner, a human being reflects both positive and negative thoughts and feelings on outside objects and personalities. If you have karmic impressions which make you desire hot dogs, for instance, whenever you see or smell them, you will be drawn to them and you will feel elation. When intensified, the elation will cloud your judgment, and it has in parentheses after judgment, it will cloud your intellect, and you would not consider if you should eat it or not, is it healthy, or if you are hungry or not. You have projected your inner happiness on the object, hot dog, and thus you see it as a source of happiness and fulfillment, right? You have developed the habit of feeling hungry even when you see a picture of a hot dog, and you will not be able to restrain yourself when you pass by a hot dog stand. You will be given, you have given them control over you. Hot dogs now run your life. They decide when you are happy. Like all other objects, they are not the true sources of fulfillment because the feeling of satisfaction wears off and the desire rises again in a short time. A human being who is led by his or her desires is like a slave. This is a pathetic state of dullness which every human being needs to grow out of through the teachings of the meditative lifestyle. That's good. And we all have our vices, right? Yours may not be a hot dog. Mine was honey buns and Reese cups. Oh my goodness. I couldn't pass one by, like literally be calling my name. I'm like, I should not feel this way. That honey bun should not have this much power over me. Regret, sorrow, and guilt work the same way. If you had an experience which you felt was your fault and you felt bad, you will store impressions of guilt. For example, say that you were married and got divorced and your children were angry with you. You may eventually not remember the exact situation which caused the negative feelings, but the impression remains. Whenever you have another experience of someone putting down your parenting skills, you will develop feelings and thoughts of guilt. If people sense these feelings in you, they can exploit them for their own negative purposes. The important thing to understand is that the mind is a bundle of impressions of past experiences and the feelings and desires they engender. If they are based on ignorance and delusion, the desires, thoughts, and feelings will also be based on ignorance and delusion. The project of spiritual practice is to gain an understanding of where these desires and feelings come from and then to control them. The impressions of the mind are like clouds which block a person from viewing the sky, the self. The only way to rise above the clouds of negative mental impressions is to promote positive impressions. These will lead to inner peace and harmony. Inner calm will allow the mind to reflect the presence of the self like a mirror which is free of dust. The positive impressions are developed through spiritual practice. As you gain knowledge of yourself, you become less restless. You will forgive yourself and cleanse all guilt, regrets, and fears while you develop more insight into human nature and the cause of your errors, which led to negative situations. As you discover greater and greater inner fulfillment, you have less need for external sources of fun, such as hot dogs or camping. Therefore, there is less mental agitation and distraction. As you progress further, you will rise above the positive impressions as well, and you will discover that both positive and negative are relative experiences which apply only to human existence and not the absolute transcendental self, which in reality is who you are. And it has, after positive impressions, it has a little asterisk which says, see page 95. So let me flip back. Okay, so on page 95, it begins a section for yoga and religion, but um wait. Okay, so it's just taking you back on page 95 is where it begins to introduce yoga and religion and the process of bringing yourself into balance. And it talks about the three stages that is broken up into listening, reflection, and meditation. And I guess what it's referring to is that the more you practice that, the listening, reflection, and meditation, you'll be able to rise above like those impressions which send you off and get you off. Okay. We'll be at 53 minutes. We'll finish reading this little section. Okay. Because the next section after this is controlling the senses. So let me get my little. Take that off. I don't know what my little tab went. Okay, I'll get another one. All right. Meditation has the effect of focusing the light of the self on the unconscious, on the unconscious impressions, and this illumination nullifies them because it allows you to see the impression from a transcendental plane. From there, they are like matchlights as compared to the sun. What need does the sun have for matchlights? The sun is effulgent and overpowering. In the same manner, you are the self, and your true nature towers over all impressions. What are a lifetime worth of impressions compared to eternity? Your individual existence is a minuscule expression of your true self. In this manner, ignorance and negativity is purged from the unconscious level of the mind, and when this occurs, the transformation in personality becomes expressed becomes expressed visible at the conscious level of the mind as compassion, tranquility, contentment, inner peace, universal love, self-control, selfless service to humanity, etc. Consider the desires and preferences which people exhibit in their life. Preferences seem to be arbitrary. Some people like this and others like that, but if you look more deeply, you will discover there is an underlying basis for desires. Suppose you have had a bad experience in the outdoors and you died with this impression in your deep unconscious mind. In your next lifetime, you may experience anxiety at the mention of camping without knowing why. This is how karmic impressions of the past can have an effect on the present lifetime. If these fears and mental complexes are not cleansed from the mind, they can cause untold pain and anguish as well as limitation in the present lifetime. Ancient mystical philosophy has presented extensive teachings in reference to this phenomenon. In recent times, parapsychologists have uncovered proof of these through past life regression therapy. However, past life regression therapy cannot fully cleanse past impressions. This is because the deep seated cause for the impressions are not to be found in past lives. These are only the effects. What needs occur is a complete process of self discovery wherein the root cause of all karmic desires, needs, and urges are discovered and uprooted from the unconscious mind. In order for this to happen, a person must develop completely in all areas of the psycho spiritual and psychophysical personality, i.e., emotion, action, will, and intellect, wisdom. This is the plan of integral yoga. All right. This is not going to be happening all day. As soon as I get off here, y'all, I'm boiling my herbs from Yaki. Okay, so down at the bottom, it has a little diagram, right? This is the object of your affection, the self, the true self, and this is you, ignorance, contemplating how you going to get that hot dog. Okay, relationship. Hot dogs are food to be eaten. Okay, where we at? I say we're going to finish this. Okay. The diagram on this page is an illustration of the triad of consciousness which a human being experiences in the waking and dream states. The light of the one self refracts, as it were, and assumes the form of objects, subjects, and the relationships between these two. When the mind operates with egoism or ignorance, there is awareness of oneself as a subject in a world of objects, and there is interest in anything that one perceives will bring happiness. This is an illusory relationship based on ignorance. When there is enlightenment in the mind, there is an understanding that the underlying basis of all subjects, objects, and relationships is the same supreme self. With this understanding, desires to possess and interact with objects to be happy are eradicated, and the feeling of universality, the awareness that the self underlies all, increases. A human being comes to understand that he or she is not a limited individual personality, but one with all objects. Here, the term object implies people, plants, minerals, elements, animals, stars, etc. Right, so here's another diagram right here. And I'm going to read all these. Okay, you got the hot dog covering up the self inside of the star, right? And so the focus is on the hot dog and all the bubbles going on in the head. It says, I want the hot dog. Hot dogs taste good. Hot dogs smell good. Is meat good for me? Am I hungry? Maybe I can get used to vegetarian hot dogs. And they are disgusting. Vegetarian hot dogs, like, I was a person who loved chili dogs, like everything. Vegetarian hot dogs, like, you know what? Y'all should have just left it alone. I never eat another hot dog again in my life, right? Tried it a couple times. There's nothing. It's just don't. I need hot dogs. They say meat is protein and it's healthy. I'm going to die someday anyway, so I may as well enjoy myself. I have to have a hot dog. Maybe I can get used to vegetarian hot dogs. Am I hungry? What chemicals are in a hot dog? The image above has been included for the purpose of illustrating how the mind reacts to stimulus based on the contents of the mind or its karmic conditioning. Egoism. If there is an impression in the mind which has learned to think of as desirable, it will seek to act on that impression when evoked to do so. The impulses and thoughts which arise in a person occur without their knowing and without their control. A person who has practiced reflectiveness and who has been taught mystical psychology will begin to notice the subtle processes which goes on in the mind. And this is not just about hot dogs and food either. This happens with maybe you have an addiction to some type of thing, or you crave certain type of you perform certain type of behaviors because there are certain types of attention that you begin to crave, just like you crave a hot dog, and it could be destructive um outcomes to the behavior you give out, whether it's towards your body or acting out in violence toward one another. This is, like I said, it's not just about hot dogs. This is with anything that you have predispositions to that literally will destroy you if you don't get it under control. When the mind is overwhelmed by thoughts of impressions of egoistic desires, the thoughts of truth, righteousness, correctness, logic, and reason, as well as the vision of the self, are drowned out, meaning I ain't listening to you. Even if somebody comes to tell you, hey, listen, it looks like, and they might not say it looks like, they might look, you need to stop this because this not cool. You ain't even listening because your predisposition to it anyway. What you talking about? This is okay. Like, you will not listen whether it's your husband or your wife trying to tell you, your mom or your daddy, sister or brother, friend or foe. You probably won't listen to a foe anyway. But it's the same thing. Your ears are closed. You can't hear it because you don't see anything wrong with it. But there's definitely something wrong with it. Okay. When the mind is overwhelmed by thoughts of impressions of egoistic desire, the thoughts of truth, righteousness, correctness, logic, and reason, as well as the vision of the self, are drowned out. Example of the correct thoughts might be, am I hungry? Is meat good for me? What chemicals are in a hot dog? And maybe I can get used to vegetarian hot dogs. In regards to something else that your family or somebody or husband or wife was trying to tell you, after you done snapped off on them, like, what are you talking about? Ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Like, we always did it this way. Then you might have the thought, well, is what he or she was saying right? Well, maybe I am doing too much. Could I tell them to stop doing this? Because it's making such and such uncomfortable, or maybe like those would be thoughts like your higher self coming in to help you get to the right place where you should be. But a lot of times we just drown that voice out, or we drown them questions out like, I like it this way. Using the example of the hot dog, a person will feel compelled to acquire and consume the hot dog, even though they have thoughts which contradict the desire. Even if they have heard that human beings do not require animal meat in order to be healthy, that hot dogs have cancer causing chemicals and are produced with fecal matter from rodents and other substances, the mind will not have the will to resist. The mind begins to rationalize several thoughts which will enable a person to do whatever it is they desire. Like people know smoking will possibly lead them to lung cancer. Then they start to rationalize, well, I ain't really been smoking that long. I know I've been smoking since I've been 7 years old, but my dad is still living, and he been smoking like a freight train since he was 6. I still got a few good years to go. Okay, I'm gonna just exercise and eat right. That way I can smoke a little bit more. Or whether it's with alcohol or out of control sexual addiction with multiple people all the time, you playing Russian roulette with your body. Your mind just gonna be. Maybe I can just use condoms though, for real. Your mind begins to reason. It talks you out of your good common sense. Listen, even if they have heard that human beings do not require animal meat in order to be healthy, that hot dogs have cancer causing chemicals and are produced with fecal matter from rodents and other substances, the mind will not have the will to resist. The mind begins to rationalize several thoughts which will enable a person to do whatever it is that they desire. Examples of rationalizing thoughts are, they say meat protein is healthy and I'm going to die someday anyway, so I might as well enjoy myself. This process works the same way for all activities in life. Some of the most prominent areas, which most people may recognize, are smoking, adultery, stealing, hurting the feelings of others, and sex. The key factor here is acting on impulse based. The key factor here is acting on impulse based on the desires in the mind rather than on the basis of truth and righteousness. This is a factor of ignorance, of course, but also of a weak will. Through the practice of yoga and meditation, the light of the self increases, and as it illuminates the mind, it allows a person to discover increasing wisdom, devotion to truth, and the will to act righteously. And this is the last two sentences. The first task in the project of controlling the mind is to control the senses. The following section is devoted to bringing an understanding of what the senses are and how they relate to the mind and to the human experience. But this is where we're going to pause. I lost my little book marker, so I'm just having to use a brand new one. Okay, y'all. I'm gonna get off of here, pull myself together. I don't know what this is. This is definitely coming from this AC unit in here. It's from it being too cold in here, causing my sinuses to act up. I ain't got time for it. Ain't nobody got time for that. All right, so I'm about to take a bunch of herbs and kick this jank before it even gets started good. Okay, all right. Oh, I just saw your comment. What part did I say I was reading this? Francis said, Sister Pam, you just described how droops get their fulfillment through a human being of what they like to do. Oh, you know what? I think I know what part you're talking about. So it wasn't while we were reading the meditation book when it's talking about it's funny because the reading from the meditation book kind of lined up with what it was talking about in OAHSPE today too. Um especially I think that's what you're talking about. But when we're driven by certain desires and stuff, those who the droops look for. They look for those of us who let's just say love hot dogs, and it's like I get my source of protein. The droops are looking for people like you. Yeah, and um they will come and inhabit you and live with you in and around about, because you ain't trying to pull yourself together. You ain't trying to resist those things that will eventually lead you to an early death. And they and you can kind of like call that unclean behavior and unclean living as well, if you persist in it. Because if you persist in things like that and you don't get it together, like your love of hot dogs, you eventually, depending on what else you've done with your body, it may eventually lead you to some type of disease like cancer, right? And depending on how good or bad you have treated your body, it may manifest in different types of cancer. It could manifest in breast cancer. It could manifest in what do you call it, colon cancer, right? Because the colon is nothing but an extension of your tongue. It's the end of your tongue. Your crack is the end of your tongue, right? You got one long tongue. This, from these lips right here, it begins. The rectum is where it ends. And everything that happens in between, from the throat chakra all the way down to the root sacral chakra, depends on what you put in here physically. And it will affect all those lights going up and down and through here, right? So different types of cancer you may get: pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, stomach cancer, throat cancer, all this stuff. And not just hot dogs. It's a bunch of different things that you put in through here, ingest through here. Even if it go down to your lungs, lung cancer, what you put in here comes out or may not come out in a drought. It may just get stuck and you implode from the inside out. Dastardly. Let me go. Y'all, it is Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. It is June the 8th, 2022, day 129 of year 4 of reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets. Another 4-year consecutive day count is day 1147. We read pages 194 through 200 in OAHSPE. I can't believe we got through 200 pages already. How long we been reading OAHSPE? About 3 months now? About 3-4 months? Boy, I tell you, we gained so much ground. Sometimes, like some books I'm reading, it's like it's taking me forever to read it, because sometimes I will kind of skip through, going back and forth through different pages. When it's like, when you just pick a certain amount of pages to read a day and you're consistent with it every day, you gain so much ground. And look, what, 2, 4, 6, 8? Okay, literally, we're at page 200. This book is, I think it's 847 pages. We are 1/4 of the way through this already, just by consistently reading. I'm sorry, 875 pages. We're almost 1/4 of the way through here. And before we know it, so if it took us, I think we're like 4 months. So 4, yeah, it's gonna take us 2, 4, 6, 8 months, almost a year. We might go longer than a year. I don't know, to read all the way through this. But I'm already thinking, once we get through this the first time, we have got to go back and read it again. Like I've already been thinking about that. I mean, we did due diligence with the Bible. I read that live for 3 years. We read it over and over and over again, 3 years back to back. But before I actually started doing it live, I was doing it since 2013, but I was pre-recording the videos. And then when I was doing them, then I just give you like the summation of what we read that day. But I listed the chapters, doing like 10 chapters a day, right? But on my own personal time. And then I just give you the summation of like Genesis 1 through Genesis chapter 10, right? And those videos were super short, like 15, 20 minutes. The longer videos got shenanigans going on in the background with my kids and me hollering at them and talking about, 1 second, people, let me pause while I get my background together. And I hit the pause button, then I come back. Okay, pick up with my story. I was looking at some of my videos. I'm like, I don't know that I could have listened to my own self. it's funny, but I enjoy looking at my own personal growth throughout the years. But anyway, I said all that to say, after we done with this the first time, I think this first time going through, we just, like I tell y'all with reading the Bible, just go through. Don't try and go through for and understand like super spiritual revelations and stuff. Read it through, understand the story, understand who the characters are, who they was fighting with, who their family was, who the God they worship, right? We got to do that. We got to do this the same way. We just going through getting the basic facts of story, who the characters are, all the different gods and stuff. And then I think we'll have, by the time we get to the end of this and start over, plus the other things that we bring in and just a new outlook on life and experiencing things and the understanding, when we start this over sometime in 20, we're going to definitely start this over sometime in 2023, if not the end of 2022, our understanding is really going to begin to blossom a little bit. So yeah, okay. So we read pages 180 through 184 in the meditation book. I hope y'all enjoyed it today. Sorry for all of the eye watering and all this stuff. I got to adjust this temperature going from outside, being outside all day in the heat and then coming in into the cold, and I got to be mindful of that stuff. And it just, I hate getting colds and stuff like that. So as soon as I get off of here, I'm about to go ahead and juice me up some more oranges. And I'm going to go ahead and get these bitters boiled so I can ingest them. And so when I come back tomorrow, I should be good. All right, y'all. So with that being said, may y'all continue to bless you, and may your health be great, right? Not just your physical body, but mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. May your health. So word I'm looking for. I wasn't looking for great. I was looking for something else. May you be in good health in all areas of your life, in all forms and fashions. All right. So with that being said, Tootie Baby ain't gonna end it because she is still knocked out. She tuckered herself out. Kept them outside all day yesterday at the park and everything. All the kids. Ain't nobody called. The boys is knocked out. They ain't fooling with us this morning. Yeah. Y'all be doing too much here in the room. So we're gonna get y'all outside all day, right? Yeah. Everybody's still asleep. All right. With that being said, I love y'all. I'll see y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace. Bye.